My name is Ezzy. I'm a professional windsurfer, and a lot of people ask me about how to set up the fins on their waveboards. Now, with fins, there's a lot of personal preference. It depends on what kind of board you have, what's your weight, where you're sailing. So rather than give you kind of hard and fast rules, I'm going to give you some tips and things that I do, and hopefully that helps. So one of my go-tos whenever I'm setting up my fins is I never want to be standing on the trailing edge of the rear fin or fins. So what that means is that you look here on the fins, the back of the fin is never in front of the end of the foot strap, right? So you don't want to be standing on the trailing edge of the fin because that will overpower the fin and it won't work as well. Now, the farther back you put that fin, the more drive you'll have, the more power you'll have. The farther forward, the more maneuverable the board will be. And so depending on the conditions, you can change that for what you want. So for example, in onshore conditions, I'm often moving my back fin back because that gives me more drive. And in onshore anyway, you're driving more on your back foot just because of the nature of how the dynamics of the sail work. And so you're putting a lot of pressure on the back of the board, and so you want the fin farther back. Whereas in more down the line conditions, that fin can be ridden farther forward, which also loosens up the board and opens up more forward rail riding possibilities. Now on a multi-fin board, you've got the options of not only where to put the fins, but how far the fins should be in relation to each other. I think for quads and thrusters, you want the front fins to be about 1 to 3 fingers in front of your back fin. And that space is kind of measured like this. So here I've got 3 fingers and 3 fingers. And they don't have to be the same. So sometimes I'll ride, especially in onshore conditions, I'll ride on the bottom turn side, the side fin much closer, maybe a 2-finger gap, and the cutback side farther forward with a bigger gap, like 3 fingers. And what that does is it allows for a tighter, easier bottom turn while still giving a lot of control and grip in the cutback. Because sometimes when it's onshore, you get a lot of wind in the sail and a lot of load in the sail, so it's good to have that control. Now, I use the K4 fins, and they have a lot of flex, and that's something I really believe in. I think G10 is a great material for durable fins, but it's not a material for doing turns. I think flex is really important. It allows you to control your turns and really work the board. I feel like with a G10 fin or a stiff fin, it's either engaged or it's not. And that means that it's difficult to find some middle ground, and either it slides out and you do a sliding turn, or it doesn't. Whereas with these, I can really fine tune my turns. And you can see they've got really a lot of flex. On the side fins, I'm using my own Pro model, and that comes in varying degrees. And so the fins are towed in, which means they're not parallel. And you want about 3 to 4 degrees total in your towing. But every board is slightly different, and even you have to measure your specific board, because even if it's a production board, it doesn't mean that it's the same as other production boards, even of the same model. So the way you do that is you measure the distance from the back of the box to the back of the box, and the front of the box to the front of the box, and you compare those distances, and you can figure out how much tow-in is in the boxes already. On the K4 website, they have some guidelines and tips as well for choosing the right tow-in on your fins. Generally, with the Taboo boards, I'm using 2 or 3 degrees of tow-in, and I think for most people, they'll be in that range. And I really recommend playing with your fins. I think the more you experiment, then the better understanding you'll have, and the better you'll fine-tune your setup for you, because like I said, there's a lot of personal preference when you're choosing fins. So what I use is I always use 10s on the side, and my rear fins I'll use either a 17 or an 18. For Hokipa, I'm often on a 17. If the waves are big, I'll go to an 18. If it's onshore winds, I'll also go to an 18. If it's really onshore with a lot of current, I might go to a 19, and having the bigger fin with more depth and more volume, it gives you more drive, it allows you to fight the current, and makes it easier to get around, even though it's harder to turn. So you're making a compromise there. If you go too small on the fin, then you don't have enough drive. So I see some guys on 16 fins on the rear, and unless you're really small, that might not be enough, and so you don't have much to push on. So it makes it so that when you're carving in your turns, it's slowing you down. You're not accelerating as much. You don't have as much drive. So that's kind of what I like, and I wouldn't go bigger on the sides, nor would I go smaller. I think that's for a thruster where you want to be, about 10 on the sides, and then play with your middle fin. And I've found after a lot of testing that that's what works best for me, and you need to test to see what works for you.